Good afternoon, and thank you all so much for coming. My name's Dave Mowiney, and this is Lenore Blum, and together we're co-founders and directors of the Carnegie Mellon Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. And to kick off today, we'd like to invite Bob Evans, who's the Chief Communications Officer of Oracle, to come on stage. Bob is a dear friend of mine who actually lives in Pittsburgh and commutes back and forth to the Bay Area. Bob has a long history of being one of the leading voices in the information technology community. For many years, he was the editor-in-chief of Information Week magazine, spent some time with SAP before seeing the light and coming to the great son of Oracle. So without further ado, let's welcome Bob Evans.
Thank you, Lenore. Thank you, Dave. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We're really delighted at Oracle to have a chance to participate in this fantastic event that brings together beautiful ideas, elegant ideas, world-changing ideas, the people who do that, the venture capitalists, CMU alumni, and so forth. There's a very kind introduction by Dave. I did grow up in Pittsburgh. I went to Pitt. I could look up the hill and aspire to be a CMU person, but not everybody's so lucky. But it was great. We're really thrilled to have a chance to host for the second year in a row the LaunchCMU event. And I think there's a great and deep connection, over the years between Oracle and CMU. Probably about 500 CMU graduates working at Oracle now, many in very high-level executive positions there. I think the company's shared commitment to disruptive innovation, world-changing ideas, really world-class engineering are things that are going to carry us well into the future. Last year, I believe Edward Screven, our Executive Vice President, Chief Architect, was able to talk with the group here today. And I think that on and on through some of the things that Oracle's doing, both in the areas here you're describing with education and so on, connect deeply to the things that, so many of these great young companies with their wonderful ideas are showcasing. The ALICE project, the Java Learning Program, Oracle's been a big supporter of that, and, thinking of the CMU video that was shown before, highlighting, among other things, Randy Pausch, and, his discovery there at the ALICE project. And we recently worked with 4 different universities in the Middle East to translate that program, the ALICE project, into Arabic to help spread this idea of Java learning throughout the world. Another thing where Oracle, I just wanted to share our commitment to education and why we think what you're doing here today is so important, why you can count on us to be partners with you in the future. Through the Oracle Education Foundation, where we match up our employees with high school students who are interested in STEM education and STEM topics and curriculum. I think on our website we talk about this is the point, the Educational Foundation attempts to be at the intersection of where project-based learning and design thinking come together to light a fire in young people. And so much of what CMU has brought to this, and Dave and Lenore and the work that they're doing, and other people, at CMU, not just in Pittsburgh, not just here in Silicon Valley, but around the world. And I really think this notion of connecting education, young people, innovation, with big companies, with investors, with the angels, and people who are out not just to look at the world the way it is, but the way it could be. I also just wanted to touch on for a minute here a little bit about, from that CMU video that was shown earlier, and as they showed some of the films there with Randy Pausch, the quote came up. It said, it's not about trying to achieve your dreams, it's about how you live your life. So there's something very real, I think, that CMU embodies with that, right? And of course, achieving your dreams are wonderful, but dreams can't be achieved if we lead a life that isn't sort of purpose-driven. And I think that's so much what had been talked about here today, and to see some of these exciting young companies, it really, animates this sense of, where the world's headed, where it's going. This power of education goes along with that. And for us, I know with this Oracle Education Foundation we have, the commitment comes from the top. Our CEO, Safra Katz, is on the board of the Oracle Education Foundation, and it's something that's very dear to her. I wanted to close here just by sharing with you a few thoughts from a pretty unique commencement address. It was given by Larry Ellison at Carnegie Mellon in 1994. And Larry opened up his remarks by saying, sort of apologizing, half apologizing to the CMU community and saying, you know, I attended a rival institution, the University of Chicago. And Larry said, I failed to graduate from there. And the president of CMU at the time, Ken Morabian, said, Larry, that's okay. Andrew Carnegie didn't graduate either. So you're in good company. You're in safe hands. But if I just share a couple excerpts from this, because I think this is 21 years ago. And a big theme in what Larry talked about then to the graduates from the 1994 class was, don't just go out and try to manage problems. He said, fix the problems, change the problems. Be less interested in care and more interested in cure, especially in the fields of education and medicine. So if I could just share with you a couple of his thoughts. He said, as you know, Oracle is based in California, Silicon Valley, so I'm especially delighted to be in Pittsburgh today. That's because a century ago, Pittsburgh was America's Silicon Valley. It was the place where new technology, new inventions, new ideas, new firms, and new money gathered to build America's modern physical infrastructure. These new firms used Andrew Carnegie's steel, Alcoa's aluminum, Gulf's oil, George Westinghouse's power, and much of that wave was financed by Andrew Carnegie's famous venture capital firm. Pittsburgh became, after New York, America's leading corporate center, and these inventions and those firms shaped the nation, built its wealth, and helped to create the 20th century that we know today. And just please bear in mind, this is from 1994. And Larry said, today, America is building a new infrastructure, an information infrastructure that will shape the next century every bit as dramatically as the products of Pittsburgh shaped the last. Instead of railroads of steel, we're building ultra-fast information highways. Instead of physical warehouses, we're building vast data warehouses that can store all the knowledge on Earth. And he said, within a decade or so, it'll be the mid-2000s, he said, anyone will be able to view anything from anywhere at any time. And I wonder if some of the students at that time thought, this guy's done a lot, but he's a little mixed up with this prediction. Larry said, text, numbers, audio, and high-res video will all be integrated on your screen. Video telephony will be universal. Despite some recent talk about info hype, this world is real. Make no mistake about it, the impact of these innovations will be no less than that of Westinghouse's electric power on demand. They will so profoundly change our world that, 20 years from now, scarcely anyone will be able to remember what life was like without them. And then Larry exhorted the 1994 CMU graduates to tackle a problem no less than stemming and reversing what he called the decline in our nation's intellectual capital. He said, in education, the information superhighway offers us the possibility of providing a 21st century version of Carnegie's libraries. All knowledge, all lectures, all books, all research, all teachers available to everyone, everywhere, all the time. He said, we can't afford to build enough prisons to care for the results of ignorance. Even building enough conventional classrooms and hiring sufficient number of teachers may not be enough. But with electronic teaching tools that combine the power of a supercomputer with the compelling video qualities of a major motion picture, we have a chance to alter history and end the intellectual decline of our nation. And here's his concluding remark from that commencement address 21 years ago on May 15th, 1994. Larry said, it seems that every generation during their young adulthood collectively chooses a cause in a sincere effort to improve the human condition. The generation immediately before mine crusaded for civil rights. My generation was passionate about protecting the environment. Your generation is the first that is technologically empowered to pursue cures in both medicine and education. Graduates, this challenge belongs to you. For this challenge, you are prepared and better equipped than any previous generation. We depend on your intelligence, your industry, your integrity, not to manage problems, but to cure problems. I envy you. So I just want to say, with that in mind, I hope that speaks a little bit about to the shared commitment that Oracle and CMU have had in the past, what we certainly hope to carry on into the future with you. And again, I want to thank CMU, thank Dave, thank Lenore, for this. Please enjoy the sessions, the demos, the poster sessions, the networking innovation, everything like that. Thank you so much for being here today and give me a chance to share a couple thoughts with you and enjoy the event. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob, and thanks to Oracle for hosting this event, and thank you all for being here. I was thinking Larry Ellison has really given us the mandate for this day. It's going to be the business of learning. So we're going to be talking about 21st century learning. I'd now like to welcome Ben Potter, who's attorney with Latham Watkins in the Menlo Park office. And they also are our sponsors here. And Ben particularly has been a mentor to a number of our early stage startups. We do work at the earliest stages, and he's given lectures and workshops for us. So Ben, welcome. Ben Potter, our own Harry Potter, magician.
Do I need this? I don't think I'll use that. Is this on? Now it is. Okay, great. Thank you, Lenore. As Lenore said, my name is Ben Potter. I'm an associate in the Emerging Companies Practice Group of the Silicon Valley office of Latham & Watkins. I'm standing in for my boss, Patrick Polin, a partner and chair of Latham's Emerging Company Practice, who unfortunately was called away due to an urgent client matter. Patrick is very disappointed he couldn't be here today. He was greatly looking forward to delivering these remarks for himself. On behalf of Patrick and Latham, I'd like to say we are very, very honored to feature and to sponsor this event. I have 3 thank yous to deliver, and then I'll get out of the way and let you carry on with the good stuff. First of all, a big thank you to the incredible CMU team for making this event happen. It's the 3rd year for the Silicon Valley version of this event, and we've observed that it gets better every time. Second, thank you for the other LaunchCMU sponsors, in particular Oracle, for allowing us to be situated in this gorgeous auditorium. Third, a very special thank you to our dear friends Lenore and Dave Mwini and Emily Stark for their leadership in making LaunchCMU an integrated part of CMU's ecosystem in the Bay Area and also, of course, in the Pittsburgh area. As we all know, the engineering and the business programs are among the top ranked in the United States, as evident by all of the talented individuals we've already gotten a chance to see in the poster sessions and will continue to see as the day goes on. You never cease to inspire us over at Latham, and we're delighted to help CMU's efforts to share this talent and creativity with the rest of the world. Thank you very much.
Okay, I want to welcome everybody again to LaunchCMU. As everybody knows, this is our 3rd launch in Silicon Valley, and again, we're really very pleased to have Oracle and Latham Watkins as our key sponsors. Today, the focus is the business of learning, and we mean learning, and we mean business, and the business of learning. Again, very appropriate. We'll talk a little bit about our center very soon, but our center came about because of a partnership, actually, between business and technology. I had started something called Project Olympus, which is an innovation center in the School of Computer Science, and Dave here was heading the Don Jones Center for Entrepreneurship in the business school. And 3 years ago, we were saying to each other, well, this is ridiculous to have 2 of us doing things that are very related. We're working together all the time. So we partnered, and a business technology partnership which turned into the Carnegie Mellon Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. Carnegie Mellon, as you all know and we're very proud of, is very interdisciplinary. We think of ourselves as the most interdisciplinary campus or school on the planet. Very collaborative, very innovative, and a Pittsburgh gritty, can-do culture. We also have a campus, as you may know, here in Silicon Valley, and want to welcome our colleagues at Silicon Valley. I think that we have some colleagues here. Okay, great. Hi, welcome to our colleagues. Also, Carnegie Mellon is actually an international university. We have programs all across the planet, from Qatar to China to Portugal. And in fact, I think it's a little like Great Britain, that the sun, the old Great Britain, where the sun never sets on Carnegie Mellon. Wherever you are, it'll be daytime. I mean, daytime in Carnegie Mellon. Again, as I said, the Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship started 3 years ago, mandated by the Board of Trustees at Carnegie Mellon, came out of a partnership between business and technology. But now we're very comprehensive and multifaceted. We represent every single school and college on campus. We are governed by a council of deans, so every single dean is on our council, and every single dean has appointed a faculty liaison to the center. When I started Project Olympus, Bob Woolridge in their tech transfer office would call me, everybody knows about embedded entrepreneurs, but he called me the embedded faculty. And now we have embedded faculty across campus in every single school, so that's how we connect with all our schools. And those are some of our liaisons. We actually have an additional person as well. We also are the commercialization arm for most of the research centers on campus. So there's a whole variety of research centers, disruptive healthcare technologies, Create Lab, Traffic 21 is part of Metro 21. So we really work across campus very comprehensively, very broadly and very deeply.
And actually from Traffic 21, we have Courtney Ehrlichman, who's with us today. Hi, Courtney. At the risk of being bold here in Berkeley and Stanford country, we do have some goals for the Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship that we're working hard to achieve. The first is to be the destination of choice for students and faculty that are interested in entrepreneurship. We always use the analogy of the rental cars. If Hertz is the superstar in rental car represented by Stanford, then we're Avis. We have to try harder. And we are working very, very hard. We'll give you just a glimpse of some of the things that we're doing, including this event today. Our second goal is what Lenore has termed inside out, and that is taking the great research and ideas that bubble up at Carnegie Mellon and turning them into valuable companies. You know, Stanford has Google, Harvard has Facebook. We want to have that company that is out there that everybody identifies with, and perhaps one of the companies that you see today could be a candidate for that. And finally, we are going to engage our alumni network, which is more than 100,000 strong out there, to help us achieve these goals. And we always say, hey, every one of our alumni should be a customer, a supplier, a mentor, or an investor in each other's companies. That's very, very important if we're going to get there. And to do that, we have a pipeline of programs that are far too many to speak about today, and we'll highlight a few. LaunchCMU is something that was new as a part of the initiative of the Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. Our goal is to engage the investment community so they can see the great companies and the great research coming out of Carnegie Mellon, but also to engage the CMU entrepreneurial alumni that are out there, and we're very, very strong here in the Bay Area. We have 6 different audiences that we serve: undergraduates, professional masters, PhD and postdocs, faculty and staff, our alumni, you all, and the community, the investors that are interested in that. And every one of these programs serves one of those target audiences and ties back to one of the goals that we have. We can't share all of them. There's a couple that are really interesting that have been launched in the last 2 years. We just piloted our first class of the Undergraduate Innovation Scholars. This is a deep dive cohort experience for undergraduates who have shown some proclivity to being entrepreneurs. This is a junior and senior year program, which includes treks coming out here to Silicon Valley to meet with all the cool startups that are out here, and also bringing speakers back to the Pittsburgh campus, and then having them intern at a top-tier VC-backed company or working on their own startup. This program was actually patterned from the Schwartz Fellows program. Jim Schwartz is a CMU alum. He was the founder of Accel Partners. He saw the Mayfield Fellows that were working so well at Stanford and at Berkeley and wanted to have the similar experience at Carnegie Mellon. This program spans every school at Carnegie Mellon. It started off in the Tepper School of Business, but when we put the Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship together, we made sure that we had representatives from a number of the different programs. In fact, we have several Schwartz Fellows, past and present, that are here today. If you could raise your hand or stand up, we'd appreciate it. Yeah, great.
Okay, Dave mentioned Inside Out, which is a term I coined really to talk about how we might take some of the basic cutting-edge research of our faculty and actually bring that out into the public. And as you know, we don't particularly want our faculty to leave their jobs as teachers and researchers to start their companies. So the Innovation Fellows program was designed basically to have a graduate student, a PhD student, or a postdoc in a lab who's actually who's knowledgeable about the technology, but also entrepreneurial minded, who would take the company, become either the CEO or the CTO of the company. And we've just piloted the Innovation Fellows program where we provide $50K to the faculty with a matching $50K to support this particular part of the program. We have an endowment now to support this, and we have started with 2, Molly Blank this year, and she has starting a company called Palpade, which you'll hear that's in the med field, and Jeff Zakarski, who is has a company called Data Squid, and he's our second fellow. We will be introducing 5 new fellows this year. So we see this as a really good way of actually expanding faculty's bandwidth in terms of commercialization of their research. So we're really excited about this program, and hopefully next year you will hear from some of these fellows. Another exciting thing that started this year is that we were a recipient of NSF I-Corps grant for a sites program. Now, I was telling Errol earlier, this was one program that a proposal that we put in that I was hoping that we wouldn't get, and we did get it. And the reason for that is that the funding for it is totally pathetic. We are committed to produce 90 companies over 3 years on a total grant of $300,000. Okay, and when the university takes half of that for overhead. Okay, so you can understand why I was a little, hoping we wouldn't get it. But it's turned out to be actually one of the most exciting things we've done. And it's partly because we've already had the infrastructure through the center to do this. And what we've been able to do is we actually worked with 31, not just 30 companies this year, 31 new companies this year, and which span the whole university. So we have faculty and students coming from every single school, predominantly computer science, and as you can see in this chart, computer science and the engineering, but every single school is represented. And also, vertically, we have undergraduates, freshmen, through master's students, PhD students, postdocs, faculty, part of the program sort of integrated. And what's really kind of exciting about this is every month we have workshops and all sorts of things, but every month we all get together and the teams report on their progress, but also challenges. And you will have a faculty saying, I'm having problems, with this particular aspect of our team, our company, and you'll have a sophomore saying, well, had you thought of this? So it's really been wonderful dynamic community forming. And unlike a lot of the NSF programs, we're not a training center for people coming in from all over. What we're really working on is being a model for regional economic development. And I think this thing of the Renaissance of Pittsburgh, we've been very, very involved. I mean, possibly have heard about the reinvention, renaissance of Pittsburgh, and really feel that this has been part and parcel of that.
We've had a lot of successful startups coming out of Carnegie Mellon in the last few years, and sometimes the word doesn't get out here to the Silicon Valley. So that's one of the reasons that we created this event, LaunchCMU. The companies that you see up there, Dynamics, Acquion, 4Moms, Anki, No Wait, Duolingo, all are in growth mode and are still private companies, but all of them are candidates to be maybe that named company that everybody associates with Carnegie Mellon. One of the nice things is all but one of them have been speakers in our first 3 LaunchCMU events. So we're very excited about the progress that they're making. As you know, today's theme is the business of learning, or as our former provost, Mark Hamlet, would say, the business of our business, right? Everybody knows that the learning models and the education industry is in a period of disruption and great transformation. So we thought that, we've themed all of our LaunchCMUs. The first was machine learning and big data. Last year was revealing Roboberg. We thought that this would be an appropriate topic at this point in time. And we have some really exciting companies for you to see today. They're very different than what you might have expected. No MOOCs here today, for example. The entrepreneurs and the researchers here are doing groundbreaking things, and I think are going to redefine what we look at as the university in the 21st century. We are very thankful that we're able to put on this event with our sponsors, Latham & Watkins and Oracle and Deloitte. Without them, we couldn't have done this. And we're very thankful for the team back at the Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, including Emily Stark. Emily in the back, if you could wave to everybody. That's awesome for putting this together. And Clea Schlueter, Clea in the room, she was the person manning the front desk outside. They've done a fantastic job. We have one short diversion from the agenda that you have and the programs that are out there. We were thinking last week, after the programs had already printed, hey, we should have one of our alums from LaunchCMU come up and tell us how they're doing. So we invited Mehdi Samadi from Solvi that spoke in our very first LaunchCMU back in 2013, and we actually had that event at the Computer History Museum before we formed our partnership with Oracle. And we're going to ask Mehdi to come on stage here today and give us a quick update on what they're doing before we jump into the program. So Mehdi, come on up.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dave and Lenore. Hello, everyone. I'm Mehdi Samadi, and I'm CEO of Solvi, a company that I started about a year and a half ago with my co-founder, Justin Betteridge. We were both PhD students in Carnegie Mellon University working on a new technology for information extraction and question answering. And then later on, we decided to commercialize our technology. So actually, about 2 years ago, I came here to Silicon Valley, and I gave a talk about the technology as part of the first event in LaunchCMU. And presenting at LaunchCMU gave us a great opportunity to be connected with world-class investors and advisors, and we got a lot of great feedbacks. And later on, we actually followed up on that, and we officially got investment from Pejman Mar Ventures. And to be honest, it was not just about getting an investment, it was about helping us to solve a lot of problems that we faced during the past year while we were developing our product, and furthermore to connect us with the world-class investors. And also I should mention that Carnegie Mellon also officially invest on us. And over the past 1 year since we moved actually to Palo Alto, but even though that we were here, but I was in touch with Dave in weekly basis, helping us with the business, with my advisors in CMU, helping us with the technology, Lenore and others. So I really, really appreciate all the support and help from CMU. So that was the story so far, and I should mention that then all of my team, we moved from Pittsburgh to Palo Alto, and right now we are located in Palo Alto working on our core product. So that was the story. Let me tell you a little bit about our technology and about our product. Our mission is to turn unstructured knowledge sources into actionable assets for any enterprise company. And to achieve this goal, we are actually building a new automated question answering system. So suppose that for any company, there are lots of public information like forums, web, social media, FAQ, knowledge bases, reviews. And there are a lot of private information as well. Just imagine the number of calls, the number of chats, emails that a company receives every day. And the idea here is that for a company, it should be able super easy to give all this information to our intelligent search engine. And then for a consumer to be able to search and ask any question that they have and get the answer right away. For example, if you are a customer of a company and you have a question about a product that you want to buy, you should be able to ask a question and get the answer. Or if you have a question about the product that you have already bought, again, you should be able to ask your question, get the answer to your questions. Or like for human resources or supply chains or any other entities in a corporations, they should be able to very easily get access to the knowledge. There are a lot of solutions already, but they have some limitations. The most important limitation is high cost of integrations. For a lot of these techniques, you have to sit and spend a lot of time on building a knowledge resource or a knowledge base yourself. Or like the other limitation is low coverage. For a lot of questions, they are not able to provide an answer. Lack of mobile support, low accuracy, and missing or coverage for a lot of source of knowledge like chat are the other limitations that the current technologies have. But however, in Solvi, the first unique benefit that we provide is automatic integrations. It's super easy. You just need to upload all your structured or unstructured information or point it to Solvi, and then we are able to index it and be able to serve to the customers and answer their questions. Self-learning is another unique benefit in Solvi. So Solvi learns over time. Each day it improves its accuracy from the interactions that customers have with the engine. We are focusing on mobile, the fact that we are providing solutions to the questions, not just a bunch of links, and we are actually extracting answers, make it very suitable for mobile devices or a small size screen devices. It's super simple and easy to use Solvi. You just need, for the users, they just can ask the questions and get the answers. And finally, it's not just about giving you the answers to your questions, but actually Solvi look at your knowledge base and tell you the gaps and what you are missing in your knowledge base. So if you are a CEO of a company, it tells you that, oh, this question is getting popular and you don't have a good answer or a good article in your knowledge base to serve your customers. Anyways, it's supposed to be a very short talk, and unfortunately I can't go to the details, but believe me, I would love to talk to you, so please stop by if you are interested after the presentations. Thank you so much.
Okay, so it's a great pleasure now for me to introduce Professor Po-Shen Lo. Po, where are you? Is Po here? Oh, good, come up. So Po is part of my research group, actually. So it's really fun to have him here, too. I see him every Friday when our Aladdin team meets. But also, he's also part of our NSF iCorp team. So that's another connection. And in fact, his company, which he'll talk about, was founded with a freshman and a professor, which is another kind of interesting thing. But let me tell you something else about Po. He's the coach, the lead coach for the Olympiad teams. And I don't know if you know about the Olympiads. Those are the brightest math students in the country who go on the Olympiad. And we're very fortunate to have Po at Carnegie Mellon because since he's been here, he's also been leading the Putnam teams. And I don't know how many people know about Putnam. That's sort of the college-level math equivalent to the Olympiad. And the past 4 years, Carnegie Mellon has placed in the top 5 positions. I think we were even second in the couple of years ago. So we're really on the top now because of Po and his enthusiasm, as you will see with his company. Thank you, Po.
Thank you. Hi, I'm a math professor. How many seconds do I have before you zone out? That's a pretty good answer. When I've given this talk before, I would do this, and the guy said, "What?" You're doing well. Okay. But if that's the case, then perhaps the best student-teacher interaction is interaction. And maybe the best interaction is a one-on-one tutor. So tell me, how many people were in your typical classroom in high school? 20, 30. Why wasn't it 1? Shouldn't it be 1? Because then you can do one-on-one. Why wasn't it 1? Too expensive. So let's think of the history back in around year 1100, when the monks were making their books and thinking, if only everyone in the world had but one book, then we would all be literate. Of course, back in the 1100s, how did you make books? You wrote them all down. Then something was invented. It was called printing press. And that cost issue went away. We can think about other situations like this. For example, it used to be that if you wanted to listen to some nice music, you would need to have your own private string quartet. But of course, that was solved by another major invention called the phonograph. So this issue about cost, let's revisit this issue of cost. Now, by the way, I'm not trying to pick on you at all, because you're correct. There is a cost issue, and I'm going to split it. But if we go back now, in fact, even in the 1994 speech, it was already commented that, you can already have an automatic system that gives this interactive experience one-on-one without even the cost of a human. So then the big question is, why isn't this everywhere already? The cost of running such a system could be extremely low. As we know, servers these days are not that expensive to operate. So the actual answer to that, if you dig a little bit deeper, is there is still a cost. It's called a fixed cost. But the variable cost of operation is zero, or practically zero. Does this make sense? Sorry, I'm a mathematician. I like to look at every problem that I ever encounter by taking a step back to revisit how the whole problem is actually framed and try to find a secret solution that will actually solve it better. So here we are at practically zero variable cost to deliver that service called an interactive tutor. There's only this big problem. How big is that fixed cost to program that tutor? Well, given that in 1994, it was already thought about to have such a tutor, and we still don't see one, presumably it's just because that cost is too high for any individual, too high for any institution, too high for any company. If you want to solve this problem then, there's one logical conclusion. It's to take a page from Wikipedia. I don't mean a Wikipedia page. I mean a page from Wikipedia's playbook. And that is called crowdsourcing. And we actually have already seen crowdsourced solutions, such as Wikipedia, Quora, Stack Overflow. And in fact, it's very logical to do the same thing for education if it could only be pulled off. And in fact, that's what XP is. So let me now switch and show you a little bit about that. I want to talk product. In some sense, this talk is less of a PowerPoint and maybe more of a stand-up comedy and live demo. So let's go to the live demo. So what do I mean by an interactive lesson? Let's watch some physics in action. Is the sound synced? Are we good? Good. That was a 4-second video, which is a factor of 60 to 100 less than your typical online site. Because, as you said, how long is this time span? You only have 3 seconds anyway. Instead, there's a question. There's a yes-no question. What do you think? Yes or no? Yes. You think it's yes. Oops, I missed on purpose. To show you that you actually will get the feedback as if you had that interactive, that personal tutor in your pocket. Well, I say in your pocket because it works on a mobile, of course. But if you answer correctly, then your tutor keeps talking. And in fact, you can have an entire lesson delivered with practically zero variable cost over the internet because you can crowdsource the programming of this tutor. And as you can see, don't worry so much about the words. I'm just showing you how it feels to interact with this website.
It takes 3 hours to pump out the 800,000
That is a British accent, and that was the main purpose of this video. Because notice that that's a different accent than the first one. In some sense, the first key innovation of this entire site is to make it possible to create an article like that, an interactive article like that, without really needing to know how to program at all. In fact, our entire principle is let's make it as easy as possible for the average person to create an interactive lesson. Of course, we're not going to go as interactive as the most state-of-the-art interactive tutors because we need to be able to be accessible by as many people as possible. So what you see on the left is a new programming language we've invented. It's called English. And it's basically write in English. And there are a few things, like you can grab any video you want off of YouTube. Does this work? Yeah, it works. You can grab any video you want off of YouTube, you get scissors to do start and end, and boom, you suddenly have the video. If you want to ask a question, then you see what we had over there. There's the statement of the question, ask, and again, it's as lightweight as possible. We are actually creating a WYSIWYG for this even at this moment. So, basic principle for the product, put into the hands of the entire public a toolkit for creating basic components for interactive learning. We're not building the whole kitchen sink, but we want to go up this payoff curve to get as far as possible, the most bang for your buck, so to speak, without going overboard. Then, what happens is that on each of these pages, there's another major innovation on the site, which is that on each of these pages, such as Gravity, there's not only one article. In fact, this is going to now address another major problem in educational content. The major problem is called, it is boring. It's a sad truth. There are some of us who don't find it boring. Those are all the people who, you kept learning. But the reason it's boring is because there's only one lesson. There's only one article. There's only one calculus book. There's only one course in this university on this topic. And it must be one that doesn't offend the sensibilities. It must be plain vanilla. But actually, we like things that are a bit spicy sometimes. Well, I do. But not everyone does. That's why not every food is spicy. And instead, along on the right-hand side, there is a whole bunch of different articles which are competing for what is called fame. Because in some sense, this one here, this one is a 4. This one is 13. And the idea is that the crowd votes to find out what is the best lesson, just like Quora or Yelp or Stack Overflow. So at this point, you actually even provide the ability for every topic to have multiple viewpoints that the crowd has identified. And the last page of the product is that, in fact, the way we organize all of this is in a big map of concepts in which each topic, like gravity, is a competition to write the best article in gravity. But this is a flowchart for your skills. And if you zoom out, you see that we've basically created a Google Maps of knowledge, Google Maps of math and science. And if you go into any other topic, like energy, then you suddenly find some article about gravitational potential energy. This, by the way, is all from the crowd. And the key innovation is to allow the crowd to identify all of these different angles and polish them so that you will be able to create at practically zero fixed cost a site which you can deliver at practically zero variable cost, but which provides the world with this interactive tutor that they can all benefit from. I should probably say something about a business because there are investors here. So that was the product. Let me move to business. So to put into context what our business strategy is, let me put a few slides that I won't maybe say so much about, but they'll illustrate what I'm trying to say. So before, there were lots of individual websites maybe created by professors, in which case they were showing their own take on this topic, and they were all scattered around, in some sense like the shareware market of a long time ago. You have all these individual pieces, a YouTube video here, my course website here. By golly, every professor has a course website. You've got everything all around. And then there came along several big aggregators, like Coursera and Khan Academy. And these were sites which said, here, this is what we recommend that you study. These are certified classes in all of these disciplines. Sort of reminds you of something else that was going on in the 1990s, which was internet portals, which were saying, these are the things that we recommend. Although, as we remember from history, you wouldn't actually go to use recipes in the food and cooking. You might be more interested in just searching to find out what is actually the best content of what you're actually looking for. So we're moving along this direction. This is what I mean by rethinking about the entire space. So if you now realize that you're not trying to make a marketplace which just certifies that these are the right pieces of content, where you just make the pieces of content, then you want to make a site which crowdsources all of them, because indeed, usually the first article that you click on after searching on Google is what you consider to be, you click on the one that you consider to be the authority, called Wikipedia. And as we already know, what Wikipedia did to their competition is they forced Britannica to be free. How do you know Britannica is free? Well, of course, because the Wikipedia article in Britannica says that it's free. But so now, this is where we position ourselves. So we're going actually after creating, we're interested in crowdsourcing the best interactive lessons so that ultimately where we sit on, say, a quality-quantity chart is we want to have as much quantity as possible while at the same time having a quality in educational. I'm not saying that those are low-quality websites on the lower right. Those are all good sites. But in terms of ease of learning, we want to be maximized. And then, for the business model, if you already establish that you're not going to have a variable cost to make a margin on, and therefore you need to have a low fixed cost to start with, the best approach is to immediately set the price at zero, deliver a product which is 10 times better in terms of experience, to be an immediate drop-in replacement for all textbooks, and better at that point, page for page, that's a recipe for viral growth because it solves a problem that people have called, I can't do my homework. And at that point, you monetize the entire company through value-added services on areas that do have variable costs, such as human-based tutoring or certification. So that's where we are going. But our first target is simply to go for the viral growth and the millions and millions of users. And for the last things I want to comment on are in terms of validation. So this site actually is one of these sites which you probably many of you have never heard of, because we haven't gone to tell the whole world about it. Instead, we were slowly telling parts of our community so that we could get feedback and keep improving. Nevertheless, throughout this beta, which has been going since about September, we've been getting consistently 2,000 plus monthly uniques coming through who have just heard about the site through word of mouth. There are already 2,000 plus posts on the site. And in fact, we've now started to go to trade shows, like one where there were 9,000 math teachers. That was a month ago. The bottom quote is something we just got in an email after that from one of the teachers. And the bottom line is actually what we have seen from actually talking to teachers, is that this product which we have created is something that excites not only students, but also teachers. And hopefully we'll be able to change the entire landscape of education. And as a final concluding remark, I should say a little bit about, so my background. My background is I'm actually a mathematician. I'm a math professor. I coach the National Math Olympic team. But ultimately, as a mathematician, I like to do one thing. It's called multiply. And my goal is I want to multiply the number of people worldwide who like math and science by 10. And we will do that with XP. Thank you.
There we go. Thank you, Po. He really is the bundle of energy that he seems. We've had a great time working with him over the last few months. He red-eyed in last night. He's red-eyeing out tonight. And he just is the Energizer Bunny. Our next speaker is Gary Kiliani from Interstacks. Gary is a serial entrepreneur. He started his first company, the very successful Dynavox, out of Carnegie Mellon when he graduated. He founded another company called I Know That. And what's really amazing about our community at Carnegie Mellon is how much all of the entrepreneurs give back. Actually, Gary was the mentor from another speaker today, Digital Dream Labs, when they went through Alpha Lab, the Y Combinator-like accelerator in Pittsburgh. So we're very fortunate to have people that are willing to always give back. So please welcome Gary Kiliani.
I want to thank everyone for coming out today. We really appreciate it. And thank Dave and his crew. We really have a great dynamic entrepreneurial community in Pittsburgh, as Dave mentioned. So we are rapidly entering the post-PC world of 1 trillion connected devices. Whether you call it Internet of Things, Internet of Everything, machine-to-machine communication, pervasive computing, we are in the early innings of the next big technology wave. So Gartner says there'll be 26 billion smart devices by 2020, generating $1.9 trillion of economic value. But we've got a few barriers in the way of this great utopian future. One of them is there are too many standards, too many technical standards. So the great thing about standards is there's so many to choose from. It's just too hard to get the things to talk to each other. Second, engineering skills are in short supply. And a lot of the speakers here today are going to try and help us create some more engineers. But especially when you consider this next wave of pervasive computing is inherently long tail in nature. It's composed of lots and lots of small vertical niches to create the real full potential of what this Internet of Things wave is going to bring us. And thirdly, making hardware is just too slow and too difficult. So Interstacks is a system of modular electronic blocks that snap together that lets anybody rapidly build connected electronic devices. It brings rapid time to market and rapid iteration to hardware making. And the billion-dollar opportunity here is in aggregating this long tail around the world's first hardware app store. In a sense, Interstacks is iPod, iTunes for hardware making. So there's 4 pieces to the Interstacks ecosystem: snap together hardware blocks, a visual authoring tool called Stack Builder, cloud connectivity, and the hardware app store. So the stacks, the blocks. So each module is about 2 by 2 inches in size, connector top and bottom, snap together. The modules are things like motor control, infrared remote receive, small displays, large displays, sensor interfaces, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, all the various smart home automation protocols, computing, storage. So any single function hardware that you can imagine, we do a hardware block for. Secondly, messages that flow within a stack can just as easily flow between stacks. So InterStacks incorporates a very comprehensive, rapidly scalable architecture for this trillion node world of connectivity by having the same messages in a stack be able to flow between stacks. So the stacks discover each other in a peer-to-peer nature so that you have decentralized control in a peer-to-peer manner. You author applications for stacks using a visual authoring tool called Stack Builder. Hardware blocks and software blocks both present the same interface, input and output terminals that transmit or receive messages. So the way you author an application is by just drawing lines between input and output terminals of blocks. You can choose software blocks from the built-in library, or you can author your own by doing Python scripting. But really, our emphasis is to lower that bar on hardware building beyond the engineers. So applications you author using Stack Builder and the blocks you've selected to snap together can be published in the hardware app store. Publish your application, buy and sell, and in this way you have passionate communities of interest that form around communities that empower and build upon each other as they do with all the other app stores. So just as in mobile app stores, you have vertical niches and killer apps that emerge. So the App Store powers this makers to masses strategy where you have these passionate communities that invent new amazing things and then make them available through the App Store to the masses. So InterStacks is about empowering the mid and long tail of hardware making. If you graph number of units shipped, number of hardware units shipped versus hardware making entities, on the left side you've got Apple and Samsung out there at 200 million units. On the right side, you've got this extremely long tail of maker DIY with quantity 1. And in the middle, you have tons of industry niches with volumes 10K, 100K, 1 million units. So what InterStacks does is allow rapid prototyping, 24-hour time to market, future-proofing, and for the maker community, increasing volumes above quantity 1. So this long tail that's coming, this Internet of Things, Internet of Everything, pervasive computing, long tail is very long. What can you build with InterStacks? Anything. Robots, smart homes, process control, pervasive internet connected displays, environmental monitoring, interactive spaces, hobbies from model train control to Christmas light displays. So where's the billion-dollar opportunity in all of this? We know that community network effects around horizontal platforms create huge strategic value. It's been done in lots of other places. It's never been done in hardware yet. So if you just think about a long tail of 500 niches times 2,000 units per niche, that's 1 million units a year right there, plus mid-industry OEM deals and your app store 30% transaction fees. So there's a powerful dynamic fueling this future, and that's the interaction of the maker movement with Internet of Things. We all know that the best way to learn anything is to just do it, and that's what makers and STEM education are about. What's happening is you're seeing computer labs at schools all over the country being turned into maker spaces, stuffed with 3D printers, CAD tools, rapid electronic prototyping tools. And this is where you're getting just huge enthusiasm and motivation around robot competitions and really making anything. So this is a recent book, Worlds of Making, Best Practices for Establishing a Maker Space for Your School. In fact, this coming weekend, there's a huge maker fair in the area. So this coming year, there's over 140 maker fairs. Last year, there was a first maker fair at the White House. Tech shops. Tech shops are like health clubs for making things. We have one in Pittsburgh across from Google's facility. There are a couple out here. They are stuffed with CNC equipment, laser cutters, CAD tools, electronic prototyping. So this maker movement is growing rapidly and interacting with lots of other things, all kinds of exciting things going on there, where you have both professionals, educators, students, artists, designers. So Interstax has been incubated inside a design firm in Pittsburgh called My Design, based on 25 years of pervasive computing research and deployments. We've invested over $4 million of internal R&D money in its development, and I'd love to give you a demo and talk a lot more about what's going on with Rapid Hardware Building and the world's first hardware app store back at the table there. Thanks for coming out today.
People don't know that Carnegie Mellon has a School of Computer Science, and we have 7 departments in our school, very comprehensive. So we have computer science, we have human-computer interaction, we have robotics, machine learning, computational biology, software engineering. I'm forgetting something, somebody remind me. So our next speaker, and there's a little switch in the program, is Professor Vincent Alevin, who will, Vincent was co-founder of Carnegie Learning, and their product was Cognitive Tutor. His area is intelligent tutoring systems, and Vincent will tell us about that.
Well, thank you very much. I'm excited to be here and honored for the invitation to speak. And we probably all share the belief that no 2 learners are alike, and in fact, even a single learner is not alike for a very long time because learners change. They learn. So, data shows, in fact, that learners differ greatly in terms of the prior knowledge that they bring to bear when they learn. They may actually not differ so greatly in terms of the specific difficulties that they experience when learning in a particular domain. This actually is remarkably alike across learners, but what differs is when they experience those difficulties. And this creates a challenge for instruction. How can instruction take into account that learners are different, have different knowledge, to adapt to individual learners, taking into account that they're changing? And technology can help, and in particular, intelligent tutoring systems can provide this adaptive support to learners, and I should add, can do so in a way that is very complementary with the things that good teachers can do. But I should also point out that the most adaptive features of intelligent tutoring systems are rarely found in today's e-learning landscapes in MOOCs, online courses, Khan Academy. So there's a great opportunity for synergy here to combine the best features of both types of systems. And at Carnegie Mellon, I should say, we have created an approach to provide adaptive instruction using data-driven cognitive task analysis and cognitive modeling. And our scientific studies show that this can actually make learning twice as effective. And this depends on using the tools of cognitive science to study learners very carefully before designing instruction. So we know about their thinking, we know about their learning, we know about the difficulties they encounter, and we can create instruction that really focuses on those difficulties. This approach, for instance, was taken with great success at Carnegie Mellon, where researchers worked on a statistics course. So they started out studying data from students in the original version of the course and analyzed it carefully using educational data mining methods. So they knew what was hard for learners, which parts of the targeted statistic knowledge they were not learning. And then they overhauled the course, adding activities, subtracting activities, generally increasing the amount of learning by doing that happened in the course, and really focusing on the parts that was hard. And then they conducted a scientific study comparing the old and the new, and found that in the new course, students learned more, and they learned in half the time. So I would call this a spectacular success of this data-driven cognitive task analysis approach for improving instruction. And can we do even better? And I would argue, yes, intelligent tutoring systems use cognitive modeling to adapt to individual learners. So here you see the Algebra Cognitive Tutor, a pioneering intelligent tutoring system that was originally created at Carnegie Mellon and is now being marketed by Carnegie Learning, the spin-off company. So here you see what 9th grade students are using in their algebra courses. So here we are at the end of a problem, the students have finished it. It's about comparing cell phone plans, and the student has used different representations, tables, has graphed the two cell phone plans to see when one might be better, has used the equations. So it's an elaborate problem using different mathematical representations. And the tutor provides adaptive guidance in this problem to learners, so it can follow them the way they go through the problem and react to their individual errors and their individual strategies. It provides real-time help along the way. At every step along the way. There is feedback when needed, there are hints, there are specific error messages. And so the system keeps the student on the productive path and reduces floundering. And as you can imagine, this kind of interactive experience on these rich problems is much better than waiting for the next day until you get teacher feedback. That just comes too late. It's also better than answers at the back of the book, because these problems are large, and if you get the answer wrong, you still have a huge task to figure out where you went wrong. And it may also be better than just asking your sibling for help, because, well, who knows what kind of promises they will extract in exchange for that help. So this is one reason why this is effective. Another is individualized problem selection. So as the student is working, the software is constantly assessing them and building a model of their skills, tracking their individual knowledge growth, and then using that to select problems on an individual basis to support mastery learning. So each student gets just the right amount of problems. And if you go to classes that use this kind of software, you'll see that some students are still on Unit 4, whereas other students are already on Unit 11. It's very self-paced, and this helps make it effective. And as mentioned, this kind of detailed guidance in complex problems is largely absent from current e-learning, from current MOOCs, online courses, Khan Academy. They don't have this. So there's this opportunity for synergy. This software has been successful commercially. So Carnegie Learning is a spin-off company. Its product is used for middle school and high school mathematics. About 600,000 students every year use it. And the New York Times took notice, visited the school in the Bronx a few years back where this software was being used. There's also ample scientific evidence that this software is really effective. Most recently, the RAND Corporation, so an independent third party, conducted a study with as many as 17,000 students, funded to the tune of $6 million by the US Department of Education, in which it compared cognitive tutor algebra, so a curriculum of which this software is an integrated part, versus business as usual, whatever algebra curriculum the school happened to be using. And at the end of the school year, it found that the cognitive tutor group had learned twice as much as the business as usual group. In other words, another example of how this cognitive modeling, and here combined with adaptive instruction, can double students' learning. Increasingly, this cognitive modeling and cognitive task analysis approach is being done in a data-driven manner. And here, Carnegie Mellon has also led the way. It has created Data Shop, now called LearnSphere, which is a large online repository that houses many educational technology data sets for mining by educational data mining researchers. And it also provides a set of tools that help with this kind of analysis, with the cognitive task analysis, studying student learning in just the manner that I described. So to get a good sense of what it is that students are learning, what it is that they're not learning, and not only that, but also to get a sense for whether the knowledge they're learning is actually appropriately general and abstract and not overly specific, so that it wouldn't transfer. Now you might ask, and a previous speaker alluded to this, like, okay, if this software is so effective, then why is it not more widespread? And I believe one of the reasons is that it has been hard to build traditionally, and this is a challenge that my colleagues and I are working hard to tackle at Carnegie Mellon, and we've had some success. We have created authoring tools, the cognitive tutor authoring tools that non-programmers can use to build this kind of adaptive software with just the adaptive features that I described. And the software supports various end-user programming techniques, such as drag-and-drop interface building and programming by demonstration. It has been used in many projects, and data from these projects shows that not only does this tool, because it can be used by non-programmers, reduce or even completely eliminate the need for advanced AI programming skills, but it also makes the process faster, and this adds up to cost savings of about 4 to 8 times. So a good success in that regard. And these tools we have used to build many systems that have been used in classrooms. For example, there is MathTutor. This is a free open access website with intelligent tutoring software for middle school grades 6 through 8. At Carnegie Mellon, Albert Corbett and colleagues have built the genetics tutor. So this is for college level introductory genetics. It has also been used at the high school level. And as you can see, this kind of software can support much more complex problem solving than simple yes-no questions. We've also built Lynette, a simple equation solving tutor, which so for 7th and 8th grade students, just basic math skills that are important in many fields. And in 5 classroom studies, this tutor was shown to help student learning. So here you see some students at work in their school's computer lab. In one of those studies, we actually compared learning with Lynette against learning with Dragonbox, which you may have heard of. It's a popular algebra game. So before and after, we gave students paper and pencil tests of equation solving, just basic equations. And what we found was that not only was learning with Lynette better than learning with Dragonbox, but actually with this game, in spite of its great popularity, students learn nothing at all from pre-test to post-test. So just because it's interactive and just because it's feedback doesn't mean it's effective in helping students learn. It is really important that the software focuses exactly on the parts that are hard, and this game may have made algebra too easy for students. We've also used CTAD to build tutors for language learning in Chinese and French, focused on intercultural competence. We have used these tools to add tutoring to simulators for chemistry and thermodynamics. Simulators are great learning tools, but it can be easy for students to get lost just because of the many possibilities that they offer. So some tutoring, some guidance through the simulator is helpful. And we're also working on building tutors that have sort of richer pedagogy, so not just tutor problem solving. So learning with simulations is one of them, but we're also working on tutors that support collaborative learning, learning in small groups, that support learning by inventing, and a host of other methods. And we have also worked on making tutors compatible with e-learning standards so that they can be easily embedded in online courses and MOOC platforms. And we have had demonstrated prototypes, integration in edX, in Moodle, in Google Sheets, and the same kinds of integration can be used for many other platforms. So to conclude, the data-driven cognitive modeling, educational data mining, and intelligent tutoring systems can help make learning twice as effective. And given we now have authoring tools that support non-programmers in a very cost-effective way, this technology is ripe for application and adoption and for synergy with other forms of online instruction. So thank you.
Thank you, Vincent. Now it's my pleasure to introduce my colleague, Emma Brunskill, who is professor in computer science. Emma uses a mixture of machine learning, control theory, artificial intelligence to design autonomous agents that learn to and from interacting with people.
Who here has seen the movie The Matrix? All right, almost everyone. In The Matrix, at one point, Trinity, one of the main characters, needs to fly a helicopter. 5 seconds earlier, she didn't know how to fly a helicopter, so she downloads a program into her brain, and then she can fly. I work to try to make such madly efficient, radically real-time education a reality. And while I don't think we're going to be able to replace the CMU education with a program we download into our brain anytime soon, I do think that we're making substantial progress and that we can do much more than what we're doing right now. Oop, I think did that auto advance? Just 1 second. Let me make sure there's no auto timings. All right. So let me first tell you about why this is important. I probably don't have to argue to this crowd that education can alleviate poverty and help transform individual opportunity. But I also think that it's worth us to reflect a little bit about how far we are from where we could be. In the 1980s, there was a new upstart that wanted to try to replace the quarter pounder. They had this idea, the third pounder. They made both of these the same price, and they thought they would sweep the market. Unfortunately for them, Americans were unwilling to pay the same price for less beef. So it's good. If you weren't laughing, then maybe you also could benefit from our tutoring systems. So this, unfortunately, we might think this was just a product of the 80s, but unfortunately, this type of fundamental lack of quantitative understanding still persists today. And I think that these skills are as equally important now as they were 30 years ago, and perhaps even more so, given the information economy. So why is this? Well, we've already been hearing a lot about how we shouldn't be taking a one-size-fits-all approach to education. And we've also heard some really exciting results about how maybe we could move beyond that to personalized education tools. But these are still really expensive, often requiring 1 to 2 years. And despite advances of things like crowdsourcing and these additional tools, I think we need to have new ways to try to make this much, much more cost-efficient to provide personalized education. The other thing I want to argue is that we're not done yet, that even taking all of what we know about how people learn, that we haven't actually cracked the education case yet. And so we're going to need additional tools to help us move beyond how we think we should best teach to actually achieve the best teaching possible. I think we can do this, at least in part, using machine learning. Machine learning can help us make tutoring systems that get more effective, engaging, and efficient as they teach every new student. We can do this in the same way that ad companies do this, by monitoring which ads actually generate the most revenue. Except for instead of trying to make money directly, we can look at what types of activities are most efficient at helping students learn. Let me give you an example of this using Battleship Numberline, which is a fractions number line estimation game that's actually developed by Derek Lomas and his colleagues who are here today. So in these type of games, there's often a number of different settings we have to choose. Things like, how long should we present a fraction before the system times out? Now in advance, we often don't know what the right way is to make these settings in order to make the games as efficient and effective as possible. So what we can do is try different variants of the game. If we were going to do this using a standard scientific method, we would just run a control trial where we have students in different conditions. But fortunately, we can move beyond that, move beyond standard A/B testing, and remove the needless distinction between a fixed experimental phase and deployment. We can do this by using online optimization ideas, things like multi-arm bandits, which continuously change what variants are given to students as we see what is most effective. This allowed us to achieve 20 to 50% greater engagement compared to a standard experiment or A/B test. The second key opportunity comes from the fact that we're starting to get these enormous logs of big data about student learning. This is coming from MOOCs and all these tutoring systems that are starting to be deployed. And what we want to be able to do is to take this offline, previous data and use it to figure out how to improve future instruction. Now, there's been a lot of excitement about all this data that's being generated, but most of that excitement has translated into people trying to figure out how to better assess or evaluate student learning. So we've been focused on graphs like the following, figuring out how well we can predict student performance compared to what the actual performance is. But what I think we want, in reality, is that all students succeed. We don't just care about prediction, and we have to move beyond that. That requires us to think about instructional strategies. An instructional strategy is a thing like, should we teach fraction subtraction before we teach fraction addition? or even adaptive strategies like do not teach a student addition until they've mastered common denominators. So what we want to be able to do is to take this offline data and evaluate how different instructional strategies might do if we were to use them with future students. In particular, we use this for refraction, a fractions game that has been played by hundreds of thousands of students. We were curious about what game challenge to do when in order to keep students engaged and learning the most they could. So we took our machine learning methods and took all the thousands of previously completed player game data in order to understand what strategies we think would do better in the future. After identifying them, we ran a new experiment with 2,000 additional students, and we found that the strategies we'd identified using old data actually helped new students perform 30% better. We're now using these ideas for lots of other types of tutoring systems. Things like figuring out whether we should show someone a video or an exercise in the fractions tutor I showed. Now, the methods that we've been using so far allow us to look at a particular instructional strategy and estimate how well we think it would do if we used it in the future. But in fact, one of the biggest potentials of machine learning is their ability to be adaptive as they interact and get more data. Just as how I told you how we could sort of do an online optimization and try different sorts of game variants, we would like to similarly try to take offline data and simulate how a machine learning algorithm might work if we were to deploy it in the future. Our preliminary results on doing this involve cutting-edge reinforcement learning, and we are extremely excited about how this could allow us to much better leverage all the data we already have to improve future instruction. I'm going to close with I'm going to spend the last few minutes on one bigger challenge that I think we need to tackle, and that is rapidly accelerating our progress of understanding what works in education. Some of my colleagues at CMU recently estimated that there are 200 trillion different methods of instruction. Even if we could test one of those per day, that would take us roughly 1 trillion years. That's a really long time, and there are a lot of people waiting. In America alone, there's about 1 million college freshmen that require remedial instruction. They need us to be able to better figure out the best ways to teach. The business as usual is failing them and failing our society. To do this, we're trying to rapidly create systems that can learn much, much faster with very little data, kind of the little data revolution instead of the big data revolution. And this is important because every single data point we have is a student that is either succeeding or failing at learning. We do this in collaboration with learning scientists because figuring out the best way to teach requires us to understand how humans learn. As a concrete example of this, we have this self-optimizing tutoring system for teaching basic statistics concepts. We chose this domain because we feel that these type of skills are going to be prerequisites for success in today's knowledge economy. What we would like to do is to be able to teach basic statistics concepts 5 times faster than is currently possible, so that we could shrink a 2-year curriculum into a summer catch-up course. In order to do this, we are also creating new tools that can be integrated into existing platforms, things like edX, so that everyone can start to create online systems that can do this self-evolution. So to conclude, I think that we have a massive challenge and many opportunities. We already have machine learning systems that can self-optimize and improve as they teach more students. We are very close to being able to leverage large amounts of existing data in order to improve future instruction. And I think next we need to focus really hard on how we can rapidly accelerate our understanding of what works in education. I think it will require all of us, and there will be huge benefits to all future learners. Thank you.
Great job. In his opening remarks, Bob Evans mentioned Randy Pausch, who one of his great legacies is the book, The Last Lecture. One of his other great legacies at Carnegie Mellon is the Entertainment Technology Center, which is a collaboration of the School of Computer Science and the College of Fine Arts. The next 2 companies that you're going to see are a product of the Entertainment Technology Center. The first is SimCoach Games, which is making behavioral change simple, interactive, and measurable. And its founder and CEO, Jess Tribus, is also special senior faculty at the Entertainment Technology Center. Jess?
Hi. So I was a grad student in the early 2000s studying under Randy Pausch And we were taking a look to understand if games could be used for learning. Now, I feel like we all know that they can by now, but this was early 2000s. At the Entertainment Technology Center at Carnegie Mellon, our students were graduating and going off to Electronic Arts and Activision and Disney. So we were training them, or we were being trained, to do interdisciplinary collaboration and rapid prototyping really well, and we were building games to go on to the entertainment industry. But I really wanted to understand if game design could be applied to good learning. And it turns out that good games parallel proven principles for how we learn best. These are structured frameworks for how we learn. Games can be systems designed to help us learn. So we looked at games, not just video games, but old games, non-digital games, such as chess and baseball, and a personal old favorite of Super Mario Brothers. Games like that, where games have clear goals. They have clear feedback. In baseball, it might be immediate feedback, or end of the inning, or, of course, the ultimate scoreboard at the end of the game. You're being measured against who wins. Games are replayable, but the number one thing about good game design is that it puts the player at the heart of interacting with it. You have to make choices, and it's through many choices and consequence loops that you really learn well. So at Carnegie Mellon, we started to develop video games for learning, and when I graduated, I started a company called Etc. Edutainment, which we changed the name to SimCoach Games last year. And we've worked with large corporations to deliver video games for learning and behavior change. Corporations such as Honeywell and Westinghouse, Alcoa, US Steel. For those of you from Pittsburgh, Giant Eagle is a great client partner of ours, as well as University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, UPMC. Lots of games in safety training where if you make the wrong decision, you blow up on screen, so it's very impactful. The one in the middle is actually a game across of all of UPMC health system, primarily being played by 80 and 90-year-olds, focusing on driving critical skills to keep them out of the hospital. And we're seeing efficacy for a reduction in readmissions on that game. The next one is an example of how we're recruiting and training construction trade workers. We've lower corner done games on ethics, helping university students understand and practice ethics in a business setting. And the robot-looking one is with Honeywell and IARPA, which is the intelligence community funding arm, that is having a look to see if our video game can increase IQ and improve fluid intelligence. So sort of a brain training game. One of the key factors that led to changing our names to SimCoach Games is that we've evolved our methodology and really our focus on what we're focusing on when we go to companies. So simple, interactive, and measurable is what the SIM part stands for. And when we go into companies, we don't look to just replace training. We are looking to focus on maybe 3 to 5 critical behaviors that will have a measurable impact on a problem. So I wanted to give you a brief demo of one of our products so I can show you what I mean by that. So I turn the sound down. Before I get started, this is a game for the retail industry. If you go into grocery stores, they may have 50, 90, 200 stores, tens of thousands of cashiers. You might not know this, but a cashier that stands up for an 8-hour shift lifts up to 14,000 pounds a shift. So that is scanning, reaching, lifting, twisting and lifting, 7,000 pounds across that scanner, another 7,000 pounds in the bag, causing companies to fork out $10 to $20 million a year in workers' comp claims due to these repetitive motion injuries. So we've developed a game here called Cashier Safety, and essentially cashiers play it. It's mobile-based. It's actually on tablets and iPads, where you identify different pieces of equipment in your workspace that contribute to you being safe or not. If your scanner's dirty, you're going to be scanning a can 3 or 4 times before the scanner picks it up. And you walk through some basic body mechanics. So the 5 core body mechanics are what we're focusing on that can be mapped back to the workers' comp issue. We know where the claims are, so we can know where the body mechanic problems are to focus on building a game around. So we introduce the learners to 1 or 2 concepts at a time. In this case, it would be reaching down the conveyor belt and how to grip a product, and then we force them to practice. So I have to practice that by choosing the right icon, and every once in a while it'll ask me again to make sure I'm paying attention. And then you see this element up at the top of pace. Cashiers are often measured on items per minute, of around 14 items per minute. And then it sort of scaffolds on more skills after you've practiced that. So lifting heavy objects and bags with 2 hands, stepping and turning instead of twisting to reduce the injury around your waist. So I'll skip ahead here to the last skill, which is stretching, which reduces fatigue, and it encourages you to stretch between customers. And after I do that, I sort of put the whole game together here, where I have to get through 3 orders, 3 customers before this clock runs out at a pace of about 13 or 14 items per minute, and without running out of what we're calling fatigue down below. And so if I do something wrong, my fatigue goes up, but it's the rate at which it goes up which is important. So if I do something wrong, such as carry that milk carton with 1 hand and twist instead of step and turn, my fatigue points go up faster. So I'll do that, step and turn, and deal with the item under the cart here, hand scanner, and my pace is okay. Stretch to reduce that fatigue, and then move to the next customer. So cashiers are using this as their training. It's distributed through a learning management system in some retailers, so they know if they pass the training. If they run out of fatigue and die or get hurt in this case, they have to replay it until they do it right. And that's all tracked as their training so that the managers understand if they really sort of comprehend and can reinforce these skills. And so this game in particular, when we first developed it, our first partner was Wegmans, and they used it across 12,000 cashiers, and in the first year reduced workers' comp claims by 34%, and in the second year it was nearly 60%. So just focusing on 5 body mechanics really targeted the big problem that they had. So part of our sort of secret sauce at the company is really our process. Another thing that we kind of spun out from Carnegie Mellon is understanding this interdisciplinary collaboration, rapid prototyping mindset. When we start a project or develop a product, we start with a design, we get the minimum requirements down, we don't spend a ton of time on it, we just focus on what's the key learning objective and what's the measurable outcome that the client partner or whatever the problem is we're trying to solve, and we really, really try to narrow that down. And then we start prototyping right away. I played hockey in college, and so I really like this analogy of dumping the puck and chasing. And so the idea is you don't have all the requirements. This is an agile approach. You need to dump the puck, and the team needs to chase it and start this cycling until you have some rhythm in front of the net, in this case. And so that prototype, you get up and running as quickly as possible. You play test as early and often as you can, and you keep that cyclical process with the client being part of the team. And you iterate 3 or 4 times depending on scope and budget. And you can do this in less and less and less time is what we found. And so as I look at our products in the last 10 years, the one on the left is a product that we did with Alcoa. It was a multiplayer, multi-language training simulation for loading dock workers across Alcoa globally. It cost them nearly $500,000 to develop with us. It took well over a year. The technology at the time, they needed special graphics cards on their computers. It was networked, but only locally. It was driven by the trainer at Alcoa that would have the training on their server, and that's how we sort of distributed and tracked how people were doing. And then a few years ago, when we developed the cashier safety game, that was a product that took 12 to 16 weeks. Now we were going mobile. It cost $125,000 to make. And as I look at where we are today and where we're going in the next few years, we're really looking at, can we get that iterative process and that product development for critical skills down to maybe less than $10,000 and maybe around 2 to 4 weeks of development time, and creating what we're calling the SimCoach Skill Arcade, where there's employees can choose different mini games and have achieved skills, which would then be tracked as badges or however you would track them. But then you can think about games approaching entire industries with a whole catalog of mini games. Would take just a few minutes for people to play, whether they're training or they're reinforcing skills that can be immediately applied on the job, and they can also acquire and leave the companies that they're at with those skills, and that be tracked on the Skills Arcade for individual employees. So that's SimCoach Games and in an overview, and I appreciate you listening.
Thank you, Jess. That was awesome. This next company, Digital Dream Labs, is combining play in the virtual and physical worlds to help children learn better. And I think this company is a great example of taking advantage of the new Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. They were a Project Olympus probe where they used our student incubator to advance the cause. They received funding from our Open Field Entrepreneurs Fund as early seed funding. And while they were in Alpha Lab, they got great mentoring from CMU alums like Gary Chiani of Interstacks, Henry Thorne of Four Moms, and Jim Gasparo of Body Media. So let's hear their story today by introducing founder Justin Sabo.
All right, so we're at Carnegie Mellon University, Oracle. I don't need to talk about the importance of STEM, or now it's becoming more of a STEAM play, which is they're adding arts to it. But it's basically the idea that we want to teach innovation. And those are really the jobs that are going to be for your kids available in the next 10, 20 years, right? That's what's leading job growth. And parents know this. But unfortunately, technology has become more of this. And kids are not really interacting with the real world anymore. They're getting so involved with their technology and they're not understanding how it works or how to make it. Now, part of this is because STEM or STEAM is usually abstract for young kids. Thinking about chemistry or computer science is fundamentally difficult. So we began to research how we could address this issue, and the biggest thing that we found with abstract concepts is you introduce them with a hands-on component. Hands-on learning has a lot of great benefits. For one, it actually allows kids to pick up the information sooner, and it allows them to remember it longer. This led to the development, and again, where's Dave? Under the great guidance of Dave Mawhinney, to Puzzlets. Puzzlets is a consumer product. It will be launching in September of this year, and it's aimed at the consumer market for children about 6 to 10 boys and girls. Now, the great thing about Puzzlets is that it combines two things that kids really enjoy, right? They enjoy doing things with their hands and building in the real world, and they also love fun video games. And I know Jess gave a great overview of the importance of video games and how they can aid in learning, so I won't repeat that. And instead, I'll just give you an example. So picture chemistry, right? I want to know how to make water. I'm going to take a couple of toy atoms in the real world and put them together, and let's say they have little microchips in them. That's sent into a fun video game where I then combine the electrons and learn that that's actually a molecule of water, and I use that to solve a problem. Another great example of that is programming. So I'm going to show you a brief video of how we can get kids to think like programmers. Of course, there's no volume on this. There should be. But the basic idea here is that we have a problem. We want to get to the puzzle piece. So we're going to move right, jump over the flame, and then go to the left. So now, with our Puzzlet system, we put these little hands-on tiles down that represent those computer instructions. And again, that sequence is very important. So that's wirelessly sent into the game via Bluetooth. And now I'm going to play through that solution to see if I'm correct. So every time I tap on the screen, he's going to execute the next command in the sequence, and he'll get the puzzle piece. And this next part is even better with sound, so I apologize. But these kids are playing it for the first time, and they just beat the level. This was actually filmed at the past CMU event that we displayed at. And it was reactions like those that have the press really excited. USA Today called it one of the top 10 cool tech toys of 2015, and Parents' Choice gave it a silver award for their mobile apps category. Now, retailers are really falling in love with Puzzlets too because of this idea of 50-50 play, which is 50% of the time, children are engaged in the real world actually solving problems. The other 50% of the time, they're in the video game. And they have to stop and think as they go from one to the other. So it's that idea of busy hands equals busy minds. In fact, retailers saw last year that their largest category of sales came from educational toys and games, of all things. So parents are also waking up to this idea of the importance of STEM learning, even at an earlier age. Now, what makes Puzzlets unique is that it's not really clear, is it educational only, or is it a toy, or is it a video game? And it's all those things, actually. And that makes it great for the emerging market of connected toys. Retailers like Toys R Us see Puzzlets as really the next frontier in this space because they really address a market need, and they do so in a way that makes the retailers happy. It has a fun hands-on component, but then it also keeps kids coming back for more by way of video games. And parents are more than happy to allow their kids to play these games because, again, they do have that educational component to them instead of the mindless entertainment that we often see where they're just swiping around trying to get the next level of Angry Birds. Now, the other interesting stat that is not on here, we found out over the weekend, by 2020, over $70 billion will be spent on mobile education in the US. So the nice thing about Puzzlets is it sits at the intersection of that education, video game, and toy and games industries. But how do you keep the market engaged? It's really through the games, right? We have to keep creating new content, not only for existing games, but new types of games. So I mentioned chemistry before, but let's think about coin counting, for example. I'd go to the store, and with that initial investment I've already made, I buy the coin counting game, which comes with a bunch of coin puzzlets. I put them on the board, and then I can play through that in the video game. Or Terra Moon, which is sort of the spaceship game. I'm going to buy spaceship parts and put those together and fly them through space. Now, of course, the margins on the games are better than the margins on the initial purchase, but what's even better are the margins on the in-app purchases. So additional levels of game features can then be purchased after that initial $30 is invested in that game category. So here's the team. We have represented up here the Tepper School of Business, the Tepper School of Business, and as Dave said, the Entertainment Technology Center. It's actually where the three co-founders met. We have art and animation covered, 20 years of sales experience, and we even have a marketing plan now local in Pittsburgh, which is being executed, and that will be more of an online play for our retail push on Amazon. And again, that'll happen in September of this year. So I just wanted to thank you for your time today, and if you'd like, please come by our booth over there to play with Puzzlets. We have both the chemistry demo and the programming game available. Thank you.
Before I introduce our final speaker of today, I just want to remind you that we will have a reception immediately following where we've got a dozen or more companies that come from the faculty, students, alumni of Carnegie Mellon, and various other industries, not just the business of learning and education. You get a chance to talk to some of these young entrepreneurs as they're doing some amazing things. Our last presenter is Eric Frank, who is the CEO of Acrobatic. And Acrobatic is a really interesting company. I had mentioned earlier how our prior provost called the sort of digital learning and the future of learning is the business of our business at Carnegie Mellon. This company really represents this. It's built on the Open Learning Initiative, which has been making the world smarter through personalized learning at scale. Please welcome Eric Frank.
Hi, my name is Eric Frank. I'm a CEO and co-founder of Acrobatic. We are all about personalized learning at scale through the application of actually little data and learning data. I'll start with the team. We tried to consciously bring together three critical legs of a stool in building an education business. One of them is learning science at our core, represented by our chief learning scientist, Dr. Marcia Lovett, cognitive scientist at Carnegie Mellon and director of the Eberly Center for Teaching and Learning, and a number of people who came to the project or to the company from the research project that Mark mentioned, the Open Learning Initiative. But we've surrounded them by world-class technology expertise in building out a technology team led by Lukeman Ramsey's, built several successful startups, as well as some of the world's leading voice recognition applications, and then wrapping that with business expertise. People like Allison, who's our Chief Marketing Officer, VP of Global Marketing and Strategy at Pearson for many years. Bill Gutman, my co-founder, led or started over 12 ventures, many of them with successful exits. And I've been in the business for about 20 years, led a global division of Pearson on the marketing side, and then started a Bessemer-backed venture-backed company in 2013 called Flat World Knowledge. Successful, really great group of advisors around the business, also all of them investors in a bridge round in the business. Really the leading executives and entrepreneurs in the education space. Will Etheridge, former CEO of Pearson, Ray Henderson, former president of Blackboard, and also early at Angel Learning and eCollege, both with successful exits. Richard Sarnoff over at KKR, former co-chair of Bertelsmann and on the board of many of the leading education companies today. Brian Napak, former president at Macmillan, now over at Providence Private Equity, building an education portfolio. And John Katzman, maybe the most successful education entrepreneur with 2 IPOs under his belt and working on his 3rd now. Again, we're all about trying to make the world smarter through personalized learning at scale. Universities are moving on learning online, whether it's programs, courses, or entire universities, for a lot of different reasons, but they run up against the same challenge, which is when they move online and they try to scale, they run into the phenomenon of depersonalizing the learning experience. And when they depersonalize the learning experience, they tend to see a commensurate decline in the learning outcomes, course pass rates, time to completion, and some of the critical metrics that don't allow them to get the kind of scale online that they intend to when they launch those programs. We're approaching solving that problem in a very particular way through our background at Carnegie Mellon. So there's this expertise that you've heard a lot about in cognitive science, how do people learn, surrounded by some other domain expertise, and all that came together in 2001 in this project called OLI, which was trying to answer the question, can we take what we know about how people learn and use that to measurably improve learning outcomes online? It was a 12-year project, over $20 million invested in the research through the National Science Foundation and others. But more important than the inputs were the outputs, which was a strong body of evidence that indicated that, yes, students were actually able to learn more and learn it faster. They were accelerating their learning. You heard references to some of these studies earlier. They were learning as much or more in significantly less time. They were retaining the knowledge more effectively when retested 6 months later. They were transferring the knowledge more effectively to new contexts and new problems, which is really the holy grail of education. And so that led Carnegie Mellon to decide to try to launch a company out of this in June of 13. So we are actually a wholly controlled subsidiary of CMU today. We got $2.5 million in seed funding from the university directly. Our first fiscal, we did $287,000 in revenue. We're just a month and a few days out from our second fiscal closing, and we're going to do about $2.6 million in revenue this year. Also got a $2 million Gates Foundation award in October, which is really helping to power some R&D efforts. And most importantly, some of our early customers, online universities, are actually demonstrating some substantial pass rate improvements in the early implementations of products, courses being powered on our platform. So what is that platform? Basically, it's an adaptive learning platform driven on the ability to collect and model learning data. So we have an application section for authoring or ingesting content, building rich learning experiences that include text, images, videos, simulations, and other things, and an increasingly large content library of modules of content that one can pull from the library and assemble into a course. We deliver that to a mobile responsive learning environment so students can consume the learning experiences in any device they have. But the real secret sauce is the inference engine. This is the ability to collect learning data, not just what students are doing and not just how accurate they are as they're doing it, but also we're statistically modeling phenomenon like learning decay, learning curve analysis, the pattern of students' right and wrong responses, and we're really trying to computationally measure whether learning is taking place and at what level against all of the outcomes of a course. And once we know for every single learner as they progress through a course what their learning state is against the outcomes, we can turn that into actions. So some of those actions are back into the system to differentiate the learning experience of each student based on the fact that we know what they need and what they don't need. And some of them are in the form of learning analytics, dashboards that we can put in front of students, faculty, and the institution to help them make better decisions about where to spend their time. So we're trying to enable the development and the delivery of these rich learning experiences based on some of the learning principles you heard earlier. So we have tools that encourage the development of learning experiences that have clear goals, that allow students to engage with interactive elements and learn by doing, and to eventually practice what they're learning and get targeted feedback as they're making mistakes. We're collecting all of this various data that I talked about and using it to know what that learning state is against the student, and then turning that into these feedback loops for all the different stakeholders. So some examples of those feedback loops. I could go to a learning dashboard if I were a faculty member, and I could see things like how often are my students logging in, which students are having difficulty. If I gave a lecture on Monday and I assigned a couple modules online, which students, what objectives are they having trouble with between Wednesday and today? And I can drill in on any views that I really care about. So if I want to know how are students doing on all the objectives of my course, I can see the ones that students are really struggling on, and I can focus on those problem areas. I could actually see which students are in that group. So if I see the students who are in the group that are performing poorly, I could coordinate an online office hours or a virtual tutoring session for those students. And one of the really interesting views is to look at this relationship between student activity and student learning. So on the horizontal axis, we see the activities that students are completing in a unit of learning and their level of participation. But on the horizontal axis, or represented by the colors, we can see the increase or lack thereof of their learning state. And so even before they've hit a quiz or a test, I can see a student like Oliver Bennett and recognize that Oliver is engaged, Oliver's working hard, Oliver's not learning a lot, and I can predict with great accuracy that Oliver is going to fail on his upcoming assessment. And why would I allow that to happen if I can know that and design an intervention for Oliver? I can also adapt the instruction for Oliver. So as Oliver's getting a quiz online to prepare for his test, I look on the left, there's a student who has a high level of learning in Module 20 on mitosis, represented by green on these two outcomes. On the right, they have a low level of learning. And so as they engage in a practice session, I'm going to allow both of them to apply what they learned against a cancer application, but I'm going to give them different problems to work, and I'm going to dynamically build those practice sessions based on what they both need. So the student on the left, I can predict will succeed. I want to give them a problem like the one on the test and let them move on. The student on the right, I predict would not succeed, and I can identify the two prerequisite skills that they need in order to succeed, and I can pull problems into their practice session based on that. So I can differentiate learning dynamically, and I can also use science and data to actually improve learning content. So here's an example of using A/B testing, which is used all over the place in education. So I have an outlier learning outcome at the bottom where students are performing poorly. I click on that and I can see that there are 3 specific skills that make up that learning outcome, and it's one of them, characteristics of life, that students are tripping up on. So I can go and see where that's covered in the course, and I can now make a judgment as a human about where I think the explanation is less than perfectly clear and where I believe it could be improved. I could create an A/B test. I could use inline authoring tools in the platform to create an alternative explanation for that paragraph. And now I have a condition A, the original, a condition B, my new explanation. Maybe I want to insert a video, providing some additional explanation for students. And now 50% of the next group of students will get the original, 50% will get my updated new version, and I'll be able to go into my tests and see the test that I'm running at any one point and see my condition A versus my B. And if we've reached statistical validity, the system will make a recommendation to the instructor that says, deploy B for the rest. So a lot of momentum. We've got over 35 universities coming on board in the last year. Again, gone from 300,000 to almost 3 million in revenue, projecting about 9.5 next year in profitability in fiscal 16. And I guess essential for this conversation, we're actually involved in a Series A round now. So we did the original $2.5 million seed round. We did a $2.25 million bridge round at the end of last year, now raising $9 million in venture capital. We're actually fairly deep into that process. We have a lead investor, and we have some syndicate partners. So we're looking to syndicate about $3 million of that round over the next 30 days or so to close it out. So that's Acrobatic in a nutshell. Love to engage with anybody who's interested in learning more at the reception, and appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with you. Thanks.
So we'd like to thank all our speakers. And I was thinking about all the talks today, and maybe it's a little bit un-MOOC that we were doing. So here in Silicon Valley, maybe that's something you don't think about, but we're really interested, everybody seems to be interested more in personalized learning, how you can use big data, data analytics, machine learning to really get into the individual learning. Very different than sort of massive online learning.
Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, the two target audiences for today's events are the investment community here in Silicon Valley and our great CMU alumni network. So if you're an investor, I hope you found something interesting today, and that will lead to further conversations with some of the companies. If you're an alum, please, please be a customer, a supplier, a mentor, an investor in our fellow sort of CMU companies, because that's the way that we're going to get to the top of the mountain and be the best entrepreneurial university that's out there. I noticed that we had a few young alumni that are starting companies and growing companies that are here today. So Matt Stanton from Soul Power, which won Popular Science's Invention of the Year last year. Right next to him, Alexander Soto from TuneSense. I saw Matt Capizzi and Noah Tavares in the back with ZenRes, a company that's out here in the Valley doing really well, and Karithi Kalemi from Community Vibe. So there's even more entrepreneurs here with cool companies that you can connect with here at the reception. And finally, I just want to say one more thank you to our sponsors. Latham & Watkins has done a great job being our partner for 3 years and really allowing us to put this event on. Oracle became our partner last year, and just look at this venue. What a beautiful place. Thank you. And I noticed Brian Gonchar came in from Deloitte, so Deloitte's been a great supporter as well. So please, go meet some of these entrepreneurs, learn something new, and hopefully you'll leave today having learned a little bit more than you knew before. Thank you very much. Have a great day.